There is a specific hollow sensation that blooms in the center of your chest when you realize the last 6 years of your life have been an elaborate, meticulously staged lie. It doesn't feel like a sudden explosion. It feels like stepping off a curb in the dark that you thought was flat ground, a jarring, bone-rattling drop that rearranges your internal organs. For me, that drop came courtesy of a glowing pixelated square on a smartphone screen. A Facebook profile picture update, two people bathed in the obnoxious golden hour light of a beach somewhere swallowing each other's faces. The man was the one I had planned to marry. The woman was a complete stranger. And the audacity of it, the sheer, unfiltered arrogance required to post that photo exactly 14 days after dumping me, was the spark that ignited a very quiet, very methodical inferno. To understand the sheer magnitude of the betrayal, you have to rewind. Cormac and I had been a fixture, a solid, unremarkable unit for 6 years. We were the couple friends looked at and assumed would just eventually drift into a mortgage and a pair of golden retrievers. When he landed a lucrative logistics management position in Seattle, it made sense for him to go ahead. I was anchored in Spokane, grinding through the final year of a grueling master's program in architecture. The plan was ironclad. He would sublease a temporary place, establish a foothold, and the moment I had my degree in hand, I'd pack up our life and follow the highway west. For months, he played the part of the devoted, long-distance pioneer flawlessly. He drove back to Spokane almost every single weekend. He spent the entirety of the Christmas holidays and New Year's curled up on my faded velvet sofa, drinking spiked cider and complaining about Seattle traffic. By January, he claimed he had found the perfect permanent apartment. He even drove me up for a weekend to tour it. It was a beautiful, airy loft with exposed brick and massive industrial windows. I mentally arranged my drafting tables. I started sending out resumes to Seattle firms. I spent hours browsing mid-century modern credenzas online. Then came late February. I sat across from him at our tiny kitchen table, nursing a cold cup of black coffee and slid the lease termination paperwork across the wood. I told him it was time. I was ready to give our landlord the official notice. Cormac looked at the paper, then looked at me, and his face slid into a mask of polite, terrifying indifference. He didn't reach for my hand. He didn't offer a soft landing. He just blinked his pale, heavily lashed eyes and said, "I don't think you should do that. I don't think this is working anymore." The shock was a physical weight. I couldn't process the syllables coming out of his mouth. He offered no concrete reasons, just vague, corporate-sounding platitudes about different trajectories and outgrowing the dynamic. I was devastated. I wept until my eyelids were swollen shut. He, on the other hand, moved with brutal efficiency. He packed his clothes into sleek duffel bags. Finally, he carefully, almost reverently, boxed up his absolute pride and joy, a massive, custom-built, liquid-cooled gaming PC. Here is the crucial footnote about that machine. Legally, it was mine. 2 years prior, on a miserable road trip through Idaho, I had bought a neon-pink scratch-off ticket at a dusty gas station and won $5,000. I cashed the oversized novelty check, and because I thought we were building a life together, I used $4,000 of it to buy all the high-end components he had been salivating over. He built it from scratch. It was his baby, but the receipts, the warranty, the bank statements, they all had my name on them. In my grief, I didn't care. I let him load it into the back of his SUV and drive out of my life. Exactly 2 weeks later, the beach photo appeared on my feed. My fingers trembled so violently I dropped my phone on the rug. I picked it up, staring at the screen until the image burned into my retinas. They hadn't been dating for 2 weeks. People who have been dating for 2 weeks do not look that comfortable sharing oxygen. I dialed his number. It rang 4 times before he picked up, the chaotic, echoing announcements of an airport terminal blaring in the background. "Blythe," he answered, sounding more annoyed than surprised. "Who is she, Cormac?" I didn't yell. My voice was eerily steady, stripped of all the sorrow that had drowned me the past fortnight. He sighed, a wet, heavy sound of a man inconvenienced. "Look, I'm at the gate. I'm heading to Cabo with the boys for the weekend. I didn't want to hurt you. I met her 2 months ago. It just happened." "I'm sorry, 2 months," I repeated, the math immediately rejecting the variable. "I have to board," he clipped, and the line went dead. I sat in the silence of my living room. 2 months meant he had met her right around the time he took me to see the new apartment. The timeline was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was an insult to my intelligence. And that evening, the grief evaporated entirely, replaced by a crystalline, hyper-focused clarity. I became a digital ghost. I scoured the likes on his previous posts, cross-referenced the beach photo, and within 45 minutes I had a name and a profile. Ondine, a marketing director with a penchant for rock climbing and a terrifyingly symmetrical face. I didn't hesitate. I drafted a message on Facebook, keeping it clinical and devoid of hysteria. Hi Ondine. You don't know me, but until 2 weeks ago I was Cormac's girlfriend of 6 years. He told me he met you 2 months ago. I think you deserve to know the truth. The little chat bubble popped up almost immediately. Her response was predictable. She called me crazy. She told me to stop harassing her. She accused me of being a bitter ex trying to ruin a good thing. I didn't argue. I just opened my camera roll and started dropping artillery. I sent screenshots of our text threads from January where he called me his soulmate. I sent a photo of the two of us ringing in the new year on my velvet sofa. Then I typed out a painfully accurate description of the exposed brick loft he had shown me. Second floor, right, south-facing windows, you have a terrible mustard-yellow armchair in the corner by the radiator. The chat bubbles stopped. 3 minutes passed. Then my phone buzzed. That's my apartment, she wrote. He moved in with me in January. I took a deep breath and delivered the killing blow. I scrolled back to early February and forwarded a highly inappropriate, very explicit mirror selfie he had sent me. I didn't care about the indecency, I cared about the background. Notice the duvet cover, I typed. The one with the Moroccan tile print. I'm guessing you bought that at West Elm. My phone rang. The caller ID was a Seattle area code. I answered and a sharp, breathless female voice said, "Okay, enough, I believe you." For the next 3 hours, Ondine and I unpacked the labyrinth of Cormac's deception. The 2 months lie crumbled instantly. They had been dating for 8 months. She had met him shortly after he arrived in Seattle. The puzzle pieces snapped together with sickening precision when she casually mentioned her job. She had been deployed on a 2-month field marketing project in Botswana covering December and January. "That's how he did it," I whispered, pressing the phone to my ear. "That's why he was back in Spokane for the holidays. You were on another continent." He told me he was spending Christmas doing a silent meditation retreat in the Cascades, Ondine said, her voice laced with a venom I deeply respected. No cell service. We began comparing notes, a bizarre archaeology of a shared, fake relationship. He had sent us the exact same Valentine's Day text, word for word, down to the misplaced comma. For Christmas, despite me being in Spokane and her opening her gift early before Africa, he had bought us the exact same sterling silver teardrop pendant. He was a cheater, but worse, he was an incredibly lazy one. By midnight, the shock had worn off for both of us, leaving only a hardened, mutual desire for absolute destruction. We didn't just want to break up with him. We wanted to salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. "He's in Cabo," I said, leaning back in my chair. "He told me he was going with the boys." "He is," Ondine replied dryly. "But he's flying back Sunday night. He thinks he's coming home to a hot dinner and a supportive girlfriend." A beat of silence hung on the line. "His stuff is still here, all of it." "Ondine," I said, a slow, dark smile spreading across my face. "Do you own a good pair of fabric shears?" The execution took place on Saturday afternoon. We did it over FaceTime. I propped my phone against a coffee mug on my kitchen counter and watched as Ondine, wearing yoga pants and an expression of grim determination, dragged every single item of clothing Cormac owned into the center of her spacious living room. She didn't just cut the clothes, she surgically dismantled them. She snipped the crotches out of his expensive raw denim jeans. She sliced the collars off his tailored button-downs. She cut the left sleeve off every single cashmere sweater. "Oh wait," she panted, holding up a sleek navy blue bomber jacket. "He loves this one, wears it constantly." "Take the zipper out," I advised, taking a sip of tea. Completely unfixable. I watched as the pile of shredded, useless fabric grew into a mountain of textile wreckage, but the main event was still waiting. I saw it sitting on the sleek glass desk in the corner of her living room. The monolith, the custom PC. Its tempered glass side panel gleamed, showcasing the intricate web of neon cooling tubes inside. "And now," Ondine said, pointing the camera at the machine, "for the baby, but this is thousands of dollars." "Can he sue me?" "No," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "Because technically he doesn't own it. I bought every single component inside that case with my own money. I have the bank records. Legally, I am authorizing you to destroy my property." Ondine's smile through the screen was absolutely feral. "Say less." She disappeared from the frame and returned a moment later with a heavy steel claw hammer and a flathead screwdriver. I watched in rapt silence as she bypassed the delicate components and went straight for the structural integrity. She drove the screwdriver through the top ventilation mesh, cracking the motherboard with a loud, satisfying crunch. "Get the graphics card," I coached, leaning closer to the screen. "That's the most expensive part." She swung the hammer. The tempered glass shattered into a million glittering diamonds across the hardwood floor. She brought the steel down again, and the sickening snap of circuitry echoing through the phone speaker was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The liquid cooling reservoirs ruptured. Bright, fluorescent green coolant bled out over the warped metal, dripping down the side of the desk like alien blood. The machine was a mangled, dripping corpse, beyond repair, beyond salvation. "How do you feel?" I asked, watching her wipe a bead of sweat from her forehead. "Like I need a glass of wine," she said, looking at the devastation. "And maybe a maid. But mostly incredible." Sunday evening arrived with the kind of crisp, clear weather that makes a tragedy feel even sharper. I wasn't there, of course, but Ondine gave me the play-by-play immediately after it went down. Cormac had walked through the door around 7 p.m., sporting a fresh tan and carrying a bottle of duty-free tequila. He found Ondine sitting on the kitchen island, sipping Pinot Noir. And then he saw the living room. According to Ondine, he dropped the tequila. The bottle didn't break, but something inside him did. He fell to his knees in the center of the fabric massacre, his hands hovering over the puddle of neon coolant pooling beneath his ruined PC. He tried to scream, but it came out as a strangled, pathetic wheeze. He demanded to know what happened, threatening to call the police, threatening to sue her for every dime she had. Ondine had simply taken another sip of her wine, reached into her pocket, and tossed a small, folded piece of paper onto his chest. It was a printed screenshot of his exact, lazy Valentine's Day text, side by side with the identical one he had sent me. Beneath it was a photocopy of the scratch-off ticket and the bank statement proving I owned the computer. "Blythe says hi," Ondine had told him, "and you have exactly 3 minutes to gather your scraps and get out of my apartment before I call building security to remove a trespasser." He had no defense. He had no leverage. The logistics manager had completely mismanaged his own elaborate lie. He was forced to scrape his shredded wardrobe into heavy-duty black garbage bags, hauling out the mangled, dripping carcass of his beloved PC in a cardboard box, weeping openly in the hallway. There is a profound lesson hidden in the wreckage of that exposed brick loft. If you are going to weave a web of deception, if you are going to play God with the lives and hearts of two different women, you had better ensure they never speak. Because the only thing more dangerous than a woman scorned is two women scorned, armed with bank statements, a stable Wi-Fi connection, and absolute ruthless solidarity. We didn't just break his heart. We dismantled his reality piece by piece until there was nothing left but garbage bags and shattered glass. If you loved this story of absolute scorched earth justice, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the craziest thing you've ever done to get back at a cheater? Let's compare notes. I'll see you in the next one.